Okay, let's dive into this. There's this core tension in modern leadership, right? How do you become that leader who demands peak performance, who's absolutely firm on results, but at the same time, you're genuinely kind, supportive, and, well, human with your team? Our sources today argue that this isn't some kind of impossible tightrope walk. They call it compassionate accountability.
It really is the central struggle for every manager today, isn't it? I mean, for you, the real challenge is figuring out how to get those high standards, those non-negotiables, without completely crushing team morale or, falling back on that old fear-based playbook. And our sources make it really clear. This is less about a checklist of skills and much more of an art form, a way of being.
And I really appreciate that they cut right through the theory with a clear analogy. They say true leadership is like steering a massive ship through some pretty rough waters.
Absolutely. You need that firm grip on the wheel. That's your standard, your direction. But you also have to keep a kind and really aware eye on the crew. The mission is always about results, about getting to the destination, but doing it with mutual respect and dignity. You're guiding them, not dominating them.
Okay, so let's get specific. Compassionate accountability. It sounds great, but a little idealistic. What's the practical nuts and bolts definition here?
So the concise definition is this. It means you are insisting on high standards. Excellence is not optional. But, and this is the important part, you're doing that while maintaining empathy. You understand that your team is made up of humans.
Yeah.
With individual lives, needs, the whole package. It's a synthesis of unyielding expectation and necessary grace.
That really hits on the biggest skepticism I had, which is that compassion must somehow dilute the standard. It feels like you're trying to balance two forces that just want to push apart.
They do look opposite, but they actually reinforce each other. And that brings up another great analogy they used. Think of it like baking, like a really complex sourdough loaf. You expect the perfect rise, the right crust.
Yeah.
That's your high standard. But you have to understand that, the oven has its quirks. Or maybe the humidity that day impacts things. You look at the final product, but you understand all the variables that went into it.
So accountability is the result, but compassion is looking at the process and at the person doing it. I think the old model just assumed that kindness watered down performance.
And the sources are so clear on this. Kindness and empathy make the entire experience richer and more effective. When your team knows that any critique is coming from a place of support, that you actually want them to succeed, they feel like you're on their side. And that connection means they're way more likely to accept and act on tough feedback.
So the identity shift here is pretty profound then. You stop being that office tyrant we've all had, and you become more of a beloved coach.
Exactly. It fundamentally changes the dynamic. It's not transactional anymore. I pay you, you deliver. It becomes a developmental partnership. A good coach demands way more than a tyrant ever could because the coach has earned respect, not fear.
Okay, that leads us perfectly to the why. If it's this hard to become that beloved coach, what's the real strategic return? Why is this style so effective right now in today's workplace?
What's fascinating is how the sources talk about the huge shift in professional culture. That old fear-driven era where you just browbeat people into compliance. It's not just inefficient now, it's completely unsustainable, especially in a knowledge economy. Successful leaders today can't just rely on control. They have to connect, to understand, to inspire, because real innovation requires psychological safety, not intimidation.
So it's a shift from applying external pressure to cultivating internal motivation. But for the leader who's still worried about the bottom line, what's the strategic piece there?
It goes straight to basic human psychology. Most people genuinely want to do well for people they respect. So if you, as the leader, build that respect by being principled and clear and, yes, kind, you unlock what they call discretionary effort. That's the effort people give when they don't have to, but they want to.
And I can see how that effort really translates. If I start doing this, what's the long-term payoff for my business?
The sources say leaders who do this see their results improve tenfold. It's not a small thing. Workers don't just show up anymore. They become invested, motivated, co-owners of the success.
That sounds like a huge competitive advantage, especially in a tight labor market.
It absolutely is. And the long-term benefits are really stark. You see a massive drop in turnover, which, saves a ton of money on recruiting and training. You see higher loyalty. And maybe the most valuable thing, your company gets a reputation as the H place to work in your industry. You become a magnet for top talent just because you're known for being high-performing and humane.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for our listeners. Let's move from the theory to the messy reality. How do you start? What are the foundational strategies to set the stage for success?
Right. You have to get the environment right before accountability can even work. Otherwise, it just feels like punishment. We can break it down into 3 non-negotiable first steps.
Let's start with number 1.
The first is being clear with expectations. This sounds so basic, but I swear its failure is behind like 80% of performance issues. We just assume people know what we want. The source material uses that great analogy. Everyone plays a game better when they know the rules. And, crucially, why the rules exist. You have to be transparent about what success looks like and even the process to get there. Ambiguity is the absolute enemy of accountability.
But what about the leader who thinks they were clear and the employee still misses the mark?
That's where the compassionate part comes in. Instead of blaming them, the leader first looks at their own communication. Did I define the metric clearly? Did I show them an example? We often forget that the cost of ambiguity is paid by the employee, not the manager.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Okay, what's the second step?
The second is being constructive and consistent with feedback. Feedback should never, ever be a surprise. If you're surprising someone with negative feedback in a review, you've already failed the consistency test. It has to be a regular, low-stakes routine, just part of how you operate. It's a tool for guidance, for course correction, not a weapon you pull out when there's a problem.
So making it routine just takes the drama out of it. It normalizes improvement.
Precisely. It shifts the whole feeling from I am being judged to I am being supported. And that leads to the third step, which is maybe the most important for trust. It's being a safe place for people to speak up.
And how do you signal that? How do you actively create that safety?
You have to build an environment where people feel they can admit a mistake early or challenge you without fear of reprisal. A mistake should be a data point, something you analyze together. What did we learn from this? It shouldn't be stored up as ammo to, take pot shots at them later. When a leader admits their own mistakes and shows what they learned, that gives the whole team permission to do the same.
That idea of safety seems key to real engagement. Now, the sources brought in a really interesting angle here from brain science. How does our brain actually process accountability?
This is so fundamental. According to the neuroscience, our brain processes accountability in one of 2 ways. And the leader's behavior is what triggers the response. It's either seen as a threat or as a challenge.
And obviously, we're aiming for the challenge response.
Absolutely. When the brain sees it as a threat, because the leader is unpredictable or blames people, it triggers a stress response. The person goes into protection mode. Creativity dies. Risk-taking stops. They spend all their energy defending themselves instead of solving the problem. But when it's framed as a challenge, this is a chance to grow, and I'm here to help, they stay engaged. They stay developmental.
So what are the practical habits a leader needs to adopt to create that challenge mindset?
Okay, so 3 critical habits. First, be proactive. The compassionate leader is always thinking ahead. They anticipate where things could go wrong, and they put guardrails in place before work starts. This helps set clear expectations and builds a mindset that challenges are manageable, not catastrophes. You're setting up safety nets, not just demanding perfection.
That makes a lot of sense. It models preparation. What's next?
Second, model accountability. This goes right back to trust. The leader has to be the gold standard. You have to own your commitments, keep your promises. If you promise a resource, you deliver it. It's that simple. This builds trust, but it also just sets the standard for how we operate here. If a leader doesn't keep their own promises, they have zero credibility to hold anyone else accountable.
Right. Hypocrisy kills accountability faster than anything.
It absolutely does. And finally, when a mistake inevitably happens, the habit has to be to focus on solutions. Mistakes are just data. The leader's job is to immediately pivot the team away from the toxic blame game. Point them towards solutions. Ask, what did this teach us? How can we apply that lesson right now? You turn a setback into a chance for rapid improvement.
This whole approach seems to hinge on the fact that teams are made of individuals, not just interchangeable parts. So how do we personalize management within this framework?
That personalization is really the signature move. You have to recognize that everyone responds differently.
Yeah.
You can't just use a generic template for everyone. It's not enough to know their birthday. You need to learn their actual strengths, their weaknesses, their motivations.
I remember the source mentioned knowing their fave coffee, which can sound a bit superficial. How does knowing that actually lead to better, firmer accountability?
That's a fair point. The fave coffee is just the entry point. It's a signal that you're interested in them as a person. But the real goal is tailoring your management to their needs. If you know someone is detail-oriented but gets overwhelmed, you manage their workflow differently. It's a less generic, more genius approach. You're managing to their individual performance levers, not just a one-size-fits-all metric.
Okay, so once we understand their drivers, how do we empower them in their roles without just, abandoning them?
That brings us to the second practical application: cultivating ownership and autonomy. The real goal here is to help your team members truly own their roles, to take radical responsibility for the outcomes. You hired them for their skills. Now you have to trust them to do the job while you offer support from the sidelines.
And that must feel completely different from being a task bunny.
It's a total transformation. When you empower people with autonomy, accountability and innovation just naturally rise. They have a vested interest. You stop employing mere task bunnies who just check boxes, and you start building a team of real trailblazers.
And that autonomy doesn't mean anything if they don't have the tools they need.
Which is the third critical piece: providing necessary resources. Accountability is impossible without proper support. It's that simple. The leader has to equip the team with everything they need, whether it's training or tools or just protected time. You can't send someone into a gunfight with a knife. And if the team fails because of a lack of resources, that failure is on the leader, period, not the team.
That draws a very clear line. So let's wrap this all up. What's the biggest lesson you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the final conclusion from all the sources is this: being kind and compassionate doesn't mean you're soft or too nice. It means you're smart. Empathy, when you use it correctly, is a superpower in business. It's not a liability or a failure. It's the intelligence that lets you manage human beings to their absolute highest potential.
And that style doesn't just feel better. It actually produces superior results through loyalty.
It builds a team that is so deeply invested, motivated, and committed to the work, not just the paycheck. When you cultivate that kind of respect, you get a team that will genuinely go down fighting to protect your brand. And there really is no better path to long-term success than that.
That's incredibly powerful. It completely reframes how we think about effectiveness. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about how to redefine leadership in your own work, here's the immediate, actionable step from the source material you can try today. Start small. Just pick one team member. Instead of a formal review, schedule a coffee and a chat. Use that time to understand where they might be struggling or what roadblocks they need removed, and just use that bit of newfound compassion to start redefining what true, effective leadership means for you.